The morning sun cast long shadows across the mining colony of New Haven when the first explosions shook the ground. Lisa Morgan was drinking her coffee in the administration building when the windows rattled and her mug fell to the floor. The sound came from high above, where flashes of light painted the sky in colors that did not belong there. She ran to the window and looked up to see three massive shapes blocking out the stars. The alien ships were bigger than anything she had ever seen. Each one stretched for miles across the sky, dark metal hulls covered in strange patterns that hurt to look at. Weapon ports along their sides glowed with deadly energy as they rained fire down on the small human defense fleet that had scrambled to meet them. Captain Jake Martinez was already in his command chair aboard the CNS Defender when the attack began. His ship was the colony's main protector, a frigate that had served well for 10 years but was no match for what faced them now. Through the bridge windows he watched as the enemy battlecruisers tore through his escort ships like they were made of paper. "All weapons, fire at will," Jake ordered his crew. The Defender's guns opened up, sending streams of plasma toward the nearest alien vessel. The shots hit the enemy hull and exploded in bright flashes. But when the light faded, the alien ship showed no damage at all. Its shields absorbed everything they threw at it. Down on the planet, Lisa grabbed her emergency communicator and started sending distress calls on every frequency she knew. The device crackled with static as she spoke into it with growing desperation. "This is New Haven Colony. We are under attack by unknown alien forces. Request immediate assistance from any human fleet in range. Repeat, we need help now." The response was silence except for more static. The aliens had already started jamming their communications. No word of the attack would reach human space, and even if it did, the nearest fleet was weeks away. Lisa felt her heart sink as she realized they were truly alone. The first alien landing craft broke through the atmosphere like falling meteors. They were shaped like massive insects with wings that glowed red-hot from re-entry. As they touched down in the colony's outer districts, hatches opened and creatures poured out that made Lisa's blood run cold. The Vorthek warriors stood, 8 feet tall on powerful legs that ended in clawed feet. Their bodies were covered in natural armor that looked like black stone, and their heads held 4 eyes that glowed yellow in the dim light. Each one carried weapons that hummed with energy, and their movements showed the deadly grace of Born. Predators. Jake's ship shuddered as enemy fire found its mark. Sparks flew from control panels as his engineering crew shouted damage reports. The Defender's shields were failing, and hull breaches were venting atmosphere into space. He knew his ship was dying, but he kept fighting anyway. "Sir, we've lost." "Main engines," reported his tactical officer, a young woman named Kelly Brooks. Her hands moved quickly over her console as she tried to keep their weapons online. "Port side weapons are down and we're losing life support on decks 3 and 4. Jake gripped his command chair as another blast rocked the ship. Through the bridge windows he could see the alien ground forces spreading through the colony. Like a plague, buildings exploded as the Vorthek advanced, their weapons cutting through human defenses with ease. Lisa ran through the colony's streets as panic spread among the 15,000 civilians who called New Haven home. Families grabbed what they could carry and fled toward the underground shelters that had been built for emergencies like this. Children cried as their parents lifted them and ran, while elderly colonists struggled to keep up with the crowd. Dr. Amy Johnson was in her laboratory when the attack began. She was the colony's chief scientist, a woman who had spent years studying the quantum crystals that made New Haven valuable. As explosions shook the building around her, she quickly gathered her most important research data and headed for the emergency bunkers. The quantum crystals were what powered human faster-than-light drives, and New Haven had the largest known deposits in human space. Amy had always known this made the colony a target, but she never imagined aliens would be bold enough to attack so far from the frontier. As she ran through corridors filled with smoke and debris, she wondered if the crystals were what the aliens really wanted. The underground shelters were designed to hold the entire colony, population in case of natural disasters or pirate raids. They stretched deep into the bedrock, connected by tunnels that could keep people safe for weeks if needed. But as Lisa helped organize the evacuation, she knew these shelters had never been tested against an enemy like this. Captain Martinez watched his tactical display as more red dots appeared around the colony. The alien ground forces were landing in waves, each one bringing more warriors to hunt down the human survivors. His ship was badly damaged but still fighting, though he knew it was only a matter of time before the enemy finished them off. "Kelly, can you get me a count on enemy forces?" Jake asked as he tried to think of some way to turn the tide. "Sensors show at least 3,000 Vorthok warriors on the ground, sir," Kelly replied, her voice tight with stress. "More landing craft are coming down every few minutes. We're looking at a full-scale invasion." In the shelters, Lisa tried to keep the colonists calm as the sound of battle echoed from above. The lights flickered as power systems were damaged by the fighting, and the air recyclers struggled to keep up with so many people in such a small space. She moved from group to group, checking on families and making sure everyone had what they needed. Danny White was the colony's youngest engineer, barely 25 years old but brilliant with technology. He had managed to reach the main power station before the aliens overran it, and now he worked frantically to keep the colony's defensive shields online. His hands flew over the control panels as explosions shook the building around him. The shields were New Haven's last line of defense against orbital bombardment. If Danny could keep them running, the aliens would have to come down and fight on the ground instead of simply destroying everything from space. But the power generators were taking heavy damage, and he was running out of spare parts to make repairs above ground. The Vorthok warriors moved through the colony with deadly efficiency. They showed no mercy to any humans they found, cutting down defenders and civilians alike with their energy weapons. Their 4 eyes could see in the dark, and their natural armor made them nearly impossible to stop with standard human weapons. Jake's ship finally took a hit that knocked out its artificial gravity. The bridge crew floated in zero gravity as sparks and smoke filled the air. Emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows as Jake tried to maintain control of his dying vessel. "Sir, we can't take much more of this," Kelly said as she struggled to stay at her console. Blood ran from a cut on her forehead, where she had hit a bulkhead when the gravity failed. Jake looked at his tactical display one more time. The Defender was finished, but maybe there was still something they could do. If he could ram one of the alien ships, it might give the colony a few more hours to prepare their defenses. "All hands prepare for ramming speed," he announced over the ships. "Communications system." His crew looked at him with grim determination, knowing what he was asking of them. They were going to die, but they would take some of the enemy with them. The Defender's engines roared to life one last time as Jake pointed his ship at the nearest Vorthok battlecruiser. The alien vessel seemed to grow larger and larger as they approached, its weapon ports tracking their movement. Jake closed his eyes and thought of the colonists hiding in the tunnels below, hoping their sacrifice would mean something. The explosion when the Defender hit the alien ship lit up the sky. Like a second sun? Commander Ziegther stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the human ship explode against his battlecruiser's shields. The impact had caused some damage, but nothing that would stop his mission. He turned his 4 yellow eyes toward the planet below where his warriors were, already hunting the surviving humans. The Vorthok had been planning this attack for months. Their intelligence networks had identified New Haven as the perfect target, isolated, lightly defended, and rich with the quantum crystals they needed. Ziegther viewed humans as weak creatures who had stumbled upon advanced technology they did not deserve. Today he would prove that strength belonged to those who could take it. "Ground Commander Vexstar reports the landing zones are secure," announced his communications officer. "The human defense forces have been scattered. Resistance is minimal." Ziegther's mouth opened slightly to show rows of sharp teeth. This was exactly what he had expected. Humans were emotional and unpredictable, but they broke easily when faced with superior force. His warriors would finish this hunt within hours, on the colony surface. The remaining human Marines had regrouped in the industrial district. Lieutenant Ben Carter led the survivors, barely 30 soldiers who had escaped the initial assault. They had taken cover in a mining equipment warehouse, using the heavy machinery as protection while they planned their next move. "We can't stay here long," Ben told his sergeant, a tough woman named Maria Santos. "The aliens have thermal scanners. They'll find us soon enough." Maria checked her rifle's power cell and frowned. They were running low on ammunition, and their standard weapons barely scratched the Vorthak armor. "What about the mining charges in Storage Bay 7? If we can get there, we might be able to make some real noise." Ben nodded. The industrial mining charges were powerful enough to blast through solid rock. If they could turn them into improvised weapons, they might have a chance to hurt the aliens. It was dangerous work, but they were already facing certain death. The Vorthak warriors moved through the colony streets in hunting packs of 6. Their enhanced senses allowed them to track human scent even through smoke and debris. They found the first group of hiding civilians in an abandoned medical clinic, and their energy weapons made quick work of the terrified families. Vextar, the ground force commander, coordinated the hunt from his mobile command post. He was larger than the typical warrior, with scars across his armored hide that spoke of many battles. Like all Vorthak, he believed that showing mercy was a sign of weakness. The humans would learn what happened to species that possessed resources the Empire needed. "Sector 7 is clear," reported one of his pack leaders. 15 humans eliminated. No survivors. "Continue the sweep pattern," Vextar ordered. "Intelligence indicates most of the population has retreated to underground shelters. Find the entrances and seal them. We will smoke them out when we are ready." In the deep shelters, Lisa Morgan tried to maintain order among the frightened colonists. The power kept fluctuating as the systems above ground took damage, and the air was getting stale with so many people packed into the confined space. She had set up a command center in the main tunnel using portable computers and communication equipment. Dr. Amy Johnson worked beside her, analyzing the sensor data they were receiving from the surface monitoring systems. The readings showed massive thermal signatures moving through the colony in organized patterns. "They're being systematic about this," she told Lisa quietly. "This isn't random destruction. They're searching for something specific." "The quantum crystals," Lisa replied. She had reached the same conclusion. "They know exactly what we have here and how valuable it is. This whole attack was planned around getting those crystals." Danny White's voice crackled over the comm system from the power station. "I'm losing generators faster than I can repair them. The shields are down to 30% power, and I don't have the parts to fix what they're breaking." Lisa closed her eyes for a moment. Without the shields, the alien ships would be able to bombard the colony from orbit. The underground shelters might protect them from small arms fire, but they would not survive concentrated fire from space. "Do what you can, Danny," she replied. "Every minute you buy us is a chance for help to arrive." But even as she said it, Lisa knew help was not coming. The nearest human fleet was weeks away, and the aliens had cut all communication to the outside. New Haven was on its own dot above ground. Ben Carter's Marines had reached the storage bay where the mining charges were kept. The building had taken some damage from the bombardment, but the explosive materials were still intact. Ben carefully examined the charges while Maria kept watch at the door. "These are designed for precision mining work," he told his team. "But if we remove the safety limiters and pack them together, we can make some serious bombs." The work was dangerous. One mistake would kill them all instantly. But Ben's hands were steady as he rewired the detonators, turning mining tools into weapons of war. His Marines collected as many charges as they could carry, along with timers and remote triggers. "We hit them hard and fast," Ben explained to his team. "Target their command vehicles and communication equipment. Make them think twice about walking through our streets like they own them." The first Vorthak patrol to encounter the human bombs learned a harsh lesson about human ingenuity. The explosion turned their armored transport into twisted metal and left a crater in the street. 3 warriors died instantly, while 2 more were badly wounded. Vextar received the report with surprise and growing anger. The humans were supposed to be beaten not fighting back with such effective weapons. He ordered his patrols to be more careful and called for additional support from orbit. "It seems these humans have more fight in them than expected," he reported to Commander Ziegther. "They are using improvised explosives against our ground forces." Ziegther's response was predictable. "Then we will show them the price of resistance. Begin bombardment of non-essential structures. Drive them deeper underground where we can control them." The orbital bombardment began an hour later. Energy beams from the Vorthak ships struck buildings throughout the colony, turning homes and businesses into burning ruins. The attacks were carefully aimed to avoid the quantum crystal mines, but everything else was fair game. In the shelters, the colonists felt each impact through the rock around them. Dust fell from the ceiling with every blast, and the children cried louder as the attacks went on. Lisa moved through the tunnels, offering what comfort she could while trying to plan their next move. Dr. Johnson made a disturbing discovery while reviewing the colony's communication logs. "Lisa, you need to see this. The aliens have been monitoring our transmissions for weeks before the attack. They know our defensive capabilities, our population numbers, even our work schedules." Lisa studied the data with growing alarm. The Vorthak had not just stumbled upon New Haven. They had been watching and planning, learning everything they needed to know for a successful invasion. This was not random violence, it was calculated warfare. "How long have they been watching?" "US?" she asked. "At least 3 months," Amy replied. "Maybe longer. They've been intercepting our routine communications and building a complete picture of the colony. They know exactly what we have here and how to take it." The realization hit Lisa like a physical blow. The colonists had been living their normal lives while alien eyes watched their every move. The enemy had planned this attack down to the smallest detail. While the humans had been completely unaware of the threat, Danny's voice came over the come again. Weaker now and filled with exhaustion. "Shields are down to 15%. I've lost 3 more generators and the cooling systems are failing. I can maybe give you another few hours before everything shuts down." Lisa looked around at the faces of the colonists' men, women, and children who had come to New Haven to build new lives among the stars. They had trusted in human technology and military protection to keep them safe. Now that protection was failing and there was nowhere left to run. "Keep trying, Danny," she said into the communicator. "We're not giving up yet." But in her heart, Lisa wondered if they were only prolonging the inevitable. The aliens had superior numbers, better weapons, and complete tactical advantage. The colonists were trapped underground while the enemy controlled the surface and the space around their world. Ben Carter's team struck again, this time targeting a Vorthak communication array. The explosion destroyed the equipment and killed 2 more alien warriors, but Ben lost 3 of his Marines in the attack. He was running out of both explosives and soldiers. The hunt was entering its most dangerous phase. The Vorthak were angry now, and angry aliens were even more deadly than usual. They would stop at nothing to complete their mission and claim the quantum crystals that had brought them so far from home. In the depths of space, the alien ships maintained their orbital positions while their warriors scoured the colony below. Commander Ziegther was confident that victory was within his grasp. The humans could hide and set off their primitive bombs, but they could not escape forever. Soon the quantum crystals would belong to the Vorthak Empire, and another human colony would become a footnote in galactic history. 3 days had passed since the Vorthak attack began, and the situation in New Haven had gone from desperate to hopeless. The alien forces now controlled most of the colony surface, and their systematic hunt for survivors had claimed thousands of lives. In the underground shelters, the remaining colonists huddled together in the dim emergency lighting. Knowing that each hour might be their last, Lisa Morgan had not slept in 48 hours. She moved through the tunnel system like a ghost, checking on the survivors and trying to maintain some semblance of order. The shelter population had dropped to fewer than 8,000 people as the Vorthak hunting parties found and eliminated more hiding places. The air recycling system struggled to handle so many people in such a confined space, and the smell of fear and desperation filled every corner. "We're losing people faster than we can count them," reported Carl Peterson, the shelter's medical officer. His improvised hospital was overwhelmed with wounded colonists who had barely escaped the alien patrols. "I've got families asking me when help is coming, and I don't know what to tell them anymore." Lisa looked at the faces around her, children who had stopped crying because they had no tears left, parents who held their families close while trying to hide their own terror, elderly colonists who sat quietly because they knew they would slow down any escape attempt. These people had trusted her to keep them safe, and she was failing them. Above ground, Lieutenant Ben Carter's resistance had been reduced to 12 soldiers. They hid in the ruins of the industrial complex, using the twisted metal and rubble as cover while they planned their next attack. Ben's face was streaked with dirt and dried blood, and his hands shook slightly from exhaustion and stim injections. "We hit their supply depot last night," he told Sergeant Maria Santos. "Killed maybe 6 of them and destroyed some equipment, but they just brought in more. For everyone we take down, there's 10 more ready to replace them." Maria checked her rifles. Power cell again. They were down to their last few shots, and the Vorthak seemed to have unlimited ammunition. "What about Danny at the power station? Any word from him?" Ben shook his head. Danny White had not responded to communication attempts in over 12 hours. Either his equipment was damaged or the young engineer was dead. Without him maintaining the generators, the colony's last defenses would fail completely. In the quantum crystal mines, Commander Vexstar supervised the extraction operation. His warriors had cleared the mining tunnels of human workers and were now using their own equipment to harvest the valuable crystals. The work went slowly because they had to be careful not to damage the delicate crystal formations, but steady progress was being made. "Production rates are acceptable," reported his mining supervisor. "We should have enough crystals loaded within 2 standard cycles to power a small fleet." Vexstar examined one of the harvested crystals, watching the way it caught and reflected light in patterns that hurt human eyes to look at. These quantum crystals were the key to faster-than-light travel, and possessing them would give the Vorthak Empire a significant advantage over their enemies. The death of this human colony was a small price to pay for such a strategic resource. Dr. Amy Johnson had been working non-stop in her makeshift laboratory deep in the shelter system, using portable equipment and what data she could access from the colony's damaged computer network. She had made a disturbing discovery about the alien technology. The Vorthak were not just randomly attacking human settlements, they were following a carefully planned campaign of resource acquisition. "Lisa, you need to see this," Amy called from her workstation. The colony administrator hurried over to where the scientist was displaying intercepted alien communications on her screen. "I've been analyzing the signals the Vorthak ships are sending to each other," Amy explained. "Their language is partially mathematical, and I've been able to decode some of their tactical reports. This attack on New Haven is part of a larger operation. They're hitting multiple human colonies simultaneously." Lisa felt her blood turn cold. "How many colonies?" "At least 7 that I can identify from their communications," Amy replied. "Maybe more. They've been planning this for months, gathering intelligence on our defenses and resource locations. New Haven isn't just being attacked, we're being systematically harvested." The implications were staggering. If the Vorthak were attacking multiple human colonies at once, it meant the alien empire had committed significant resources to this campaign. It also meant that even if word of New Haven's plight somehow reached human space, the military response would be spread thin across multiple crisis points. Down in the deepest parts of the shelter system, families had claimed small spaces for themselves using blankets and personal belongings. Children who had been playing in the colony's parks just days ago now sat silently beside their parents, their eyes too old for their young faces. The adults spoke in whispers, sharing what little food remained and trying to maintain hope for rescue that everyone knew was not coming. Mrs. Helen Davis sat with her 2 young sons, ages 6 and 9. Her husband had been working at the spaceport when the attack began, and she had not heard from him since. She told her children stories. to keep their minds off the sounds of weapons fire that occasionally echoed through the tunnels, but she was running out of happy endings. "When are we going home, Mom?" asked her younger son. Helen pulled him closer and forced a smile. "Soon, sweetheart. We just need to wait here a little longer until it's safe." But Helen knew they might never go home again. The sounds from above had changed over the past day. Instead of constant battle, there were now organized movements and the hum of alien machinery. The Vorthak were no longer just attacking, they were setting up permanent operations. Lieutenant Carter's team prepared for what might be their final mission. They had identified a Vorthak command post in the former colony administration building, and Ben was determined to strike one last blow against the invaders. The building was heavily guarded, but if they could destroy the alien communication equipment, it might disrupt their coordination long enough for some civilians to escape. "This is probably a one-way trip," Ben told his remaining soldiers. "Anyone who wants to stay behind and guard the tunnel entrances, I understand." Maria Santos spoke for the group. "We're all in, Lieutenant. These aliens picked the wrong colony to mess with. The attack began at midnight colony time. Ben's team moved through the ruins like shadows, using every piece of cover to avoid the Vorthak thermal scanners. They had learned the aliens' patrol patterns over the past 3 days, and they knew exactly when the guard rotations occurred. The first alien sentry died without making a sound. Maria's combat knife finding the weak spot between armor plates that human intelligence had identified months ago. The team moved deeper into the building, placing their remaining explosive charges at critical structural points, but the Vorthak had learned from the previous human attacks. Motion sensors hidden throughout the building detected the intruders, and alarms began blaring just as Ben reached the communication center. Suddenly the corridors filled with alien warriors, their energy weapons casting deadly light through the darkness. "Charges are set," Ben reported over his comm as plasma bolts scorched the air around him. 30 seconds to detonation. The team fought their way back through the building, trading their lives for precious seconds. Maria fell to alien fire just meters from the exit, her last words a curse directed at the enemy. Ben made it outside with only 4 soldiers remaining, and they ran for cover as the building exploded behind them. The blast destroyed the Vorthak command post and killed dozens of alien warriors, but Ben's team paid a heavy price. He was now down to 3 soldiers, and they were completely out of ammunition. The resistance phase of the battle was over. In the shelters, the colonists felt the explosion through the rock and wondered what it meant. Some dared to hope that human reinforcements had finally arrived, but Lisa and the other leaders knew better. It was just Ben and his team making their final stand, buying a few more hours for people who had nowhere left to run. Danny White was still alive at the power station, though barely. He had barricaded himself in the main control room when the aliens overran the facility, and for 3 days he had fought a desperate battle to keep the colony's last generator online. His food had run out yesterday, and he was surviving on water from the emergency supplies and stimulant drugs that kept him awake. The generator room was filled with the sound of failing machinery. Systems that had run smoothly for years were now held together with improvised repairs and sheer determination. Danny knew he could not keep the power flowing much longer, but he would try until his body gave out completely. "Come on, you piece of junk," he whispered to the main generator as it made an ominous grinding sound. "Just a few more hours. That's all I'm asking." But the generator's bearings were failing, and the cooling system had multiple leaks. Without proper maintenance, the entire power grid would collapse within hours. When that happened, the colony's shields would fall and the Vorthak ships would be free to bombard the remaining human positions from orbit. Commander Ziegler studied the tactical reports from his subordinates with growing satisfaction. Lieutenant Ben Carter crouched in the rubble of what had once been New Haven's main shopping district, watching through his rifle scope as Vorthak warriors patrolled the streets with casual confidence. His remaining 3 soldiers were positioned in the ruins nearby, all of them down to their last few shots. They had been planning what would certainly be their final attack when the ground began to shake. At first, Ben thought it was another orbital bombardment. The Vorthak ships had been pounding the colony regularly for 3 days, turning buildings into rubble and flushing out hidden survivors. But this vibration was different, deeper, and more rhythmic, like the beating of some massive heart. In the underground shelters, Lisa Morgan felt the tremors through the rock walls and wondered if the aliens had brought some new weapon to finish them off. The lights had been failing for hours as Danny's generator system finally broke down, and the air was getting thin with so many people breathing in such a confined space. Children whimpered in their parents' arms while adults tried to hide their own terror. "What is that?" whispered Dr. Amy Johnson, looking up at the tunnel ceiling as dust fell like snow with each tremor. Lisa pressed her ear to the wall, trying to identify the source of the vibrations. The sound was mechanical but unlike anything the Vorthak had used before. It reminded her of something from her childhood, when she had lived near a military shipyard and felt the engines of warships as they launched into space, high above the colony. Commander Ziegler stood on the bridge of his flagship and studied the sensor readings with growing confusion. His instruments were detecting massive energy signatures at the edge of the star system, but there should be nothing there except empty space. The nearest human fleet was weeks away, and his intelligence reports had confirmed that no reinforcements were expected. "Communications, contact our patrol ships," he ordered. "I want a full sensor sweep of the outer system. Something is interfering with our readings." Before his communications officer could respond, space itself seemed to tear apart. At the system's edge, a massive shape dropped out of hyperspace with a thunder that shook the vacuum itself, its arrival sending shockwaves through the quantum field that every ship in the system could feel. The UHS Vengeance was a sight that made even veteran spacers stop and stare. 2 kilometers of armored hull stretched from its pointed bow to its massive engine array, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. Railguns capable of accelerating projectiles to significant fractions of light speed lined its flanks, while missile tubes held enough firepower to sterilize entire worlds. This was human military engineering at its finest, a ship built not for exploration or commerce, but for war. Admiral Patricia Wells stood in the Vengeance's command center, her gray hair pulled back and her uniform bearing the scars of a dozen major battles. She had been conducting a classified patrol mission in the outer territories when fragments of New Haven's distress signal had reached her ship's long-range sensors. Against direct orders and military protocol, she had ordered an immediate jump to investigate. "Tactical, give me a full scan of the system," Patricia commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent 30 years protecting human space. "I want to know exactly what we're dealing with." The tactical officer, Commander Lisa Park, worked quickly at her station. The sensor readings painted a grim picture on the main display. 3 Vorthak battlecruisers in orbit around the 4th planet, Admiral. Massive energy signatures from the surface suggest active bombardment. I'm reading human life signs, but they're scattered and weak. Patricia studied the tactical display with the cold calculation of a career military officer. The Vorthak ships were powerful, but they were also spread out and unprepared for a fight. They had been conducting what they thought was an unopposed conquest, not expecting to face a human-heavy battlecruiser. "All hands, battle stations," she announced over the ship's communication system. "We have human civilians under fire, and we're going to remind these aliens why humanity earned its place among the stars." On the colony surface, the Vorthak warriors looked up in confusion as their commanders began shouting orders in their harsh language. Something had changed in the space above them, and their usually confident leaders seemed suddenly worried. Lieutenant Carter pressed himself against a broken wall as alien patrols rushed past him toward defensive positions. Through his tactical visor, he could see Vorthak aircraft launching from improvised bases throughout the colony. Whatever was happening up there, it had gotten the aliens' attention. In the command bunker that had been set up in the former colony administration building, Ground Commander Vexstar received an urgent communication from the flagship. The message made his blood run cold. A human warship had appeared in the system and was moving toward the planet at attack speed. "How is this possible?" he demanded of his communications officer. Our intelligence indicated no human reinforcements for at least 20 standard cycles. The officer's response was interrupted by another transmission, this one coming directly from the approaching human vessel. The message was broadcast on all frequencies in clear language that even the universal translators could understand perfectly. This is Admiral Patricia Wells of the United Human Navy ship Vengeance. You have attacked human civilians and occupied human territory. You have one opportunity to surrender unconditionally. Failure to comply will result in your immediate destruction. Vexstar felt rage building in his throat. No human had the right to make demands of the Vorthek Empire. His warriors controlled this planet, and they would not be intimidated by a single enemy ship, no matter how large. Commander Zeekther's response came swiftly through the command network. Continue the operation. One human vessel cannot stand against 3 battlecruisers. Prepare for orbital combat. The space battle began without ceremony or formal declaration. Admiral Wells had given the aliens their chance to surrender, and their response was to target her ship with every weapon they possessed. The Vengeance's shields flared as Vorthek energy beams struck its hull, but the human vessel pressed forward without slowing. Return fire, all batteries, Patricia ordered. Target their propulsion systems first. I want them crippled, not destroyed. We may need to interrogate survivors. The Vengeance's railguns spoke with voices like thunder. Tungsten projectiles accelerated to 20% of light speed crossed the space between ships in seconds, striking the nearest Vorthek battlecruiser with kinetic energy that made nuclear weapons seem small. The alien vessel's shields collapsed instantly, and its hull split open like an overripe fruit. On the colony surface, everyone felt the shockwave as the first alien ship died. The explosion lit up the sky brighter than the local sun, and pieces of burning wreckage began falling through the atmosphere like deadly meteors. Lieutenant Carter watched in amazement as Vorthek warriors who had seemed invincible just moments before now ran for cover like frightened children. Their confident patrols had dissolved into panic, and their officers were screaming orders that no one seemed to follow. In the underground shelters, the colonists felt hope for the first time in 3 days. The adults who had been preparing to die suddenly began talking about survival, while children asked if the bad aliens were finally going away. It's a human ship, Lisa Morgan announced to the crowd gathered around her emergency communications station. The tactical frequencies were full of chatter as the battle raged overhead. A big one, from the sound of things. They're fighting the aliens. Dr. Amy Johnson was analyzing the energy signatures detected by the colony's remaining sensors. A heavy battlecruiser, Lisa. Military designation suggests it's one of the Titan-class vessels. They carry enough firepower to sterilize entire star systems. The second Vorthek battlecruiser tried to flee, its commander realizing that his forces were badly outmatched. But the Vengeance was faster than it looked, and Admiral Wells had no intention of letting any of the aliens escape to report on human military capabilities. Helm, intercept course, she ordered. Weapons, prepare antimatter torpedoes. When we're in range, I want that ship disabled, not destroyed. The chase was brief. Human engineering had always prioritized speed and maneuverability, while Vorthek ships relied on heavy armor and brute force. The fleeing battlecruiser's engines were no match for the Vengeance's advanced propulsion system. The antimatter torpedoes struck the alien vessel's engine compartment with surgical precision, leaving it drifting helplessly in space. Its weapons were still functional, but without engines it could not maneuver or escape. Admiral Wells had effectively removed it from the battle without destroying it completely. Commander Zeekther found himself in the unthinkable position of facing defeat. His carefully planned conquest was falling apart as a single human warship systematically destroyed his fleet. The third battlecruiser, his own flagship, was now alone against an enemy that had proven superior in every category of combat. Ground. Commander, prepare to use the human civilians as shields, he ordered desperately. If we threaten to bombard their shelters, the human captain may negotiate. It was a desperate gamble, but Zeekther had no other options. His mission had been to acquire quantum crystals and eliminate human resistance, but now he was fighting for his own survival. The drop pods hit the colony surface like meteors, their impact craters still smoking when the hatches blew open and human marines poured out. Colonel Steve Parker was the first to emerge from his pod, his powered armor gleaming in the firelight from burning buildings. Behind him came 200 of the finest soldiers humanity had ever produced, each one armed with weapons that made Vorthak energy rifles look like children's toys. "Alpha Company, secure the landing zone," Parker commanded through his suits. "Communication system? Bravo and Charlie, advance on the alien command positions. Delta Company, locate and protect civilian shelters. Remember, we're here to rescue our people and send these aliens a message they won't forget." The Marines moved with the deadly precision of elite soldiers who had trained for exactly this situation. Their armor systems provided complete environmental protection while their enhanced sensors could track enemy movement through smoke and debris. Within minutes of landing, they had established a perimeter and begun their advance into the occupied colony. Lieutenant Ben Carter watched from his hiding place as the human soldiers swept through the streets with overwhelming firepower. The Vorthik warriors, who had seemed so invincible just hours before, now found themselves outmatched by opponents who fought with technological superiority and tactical brilliance. Friendly forces, Carter called out as a Marine. Patrol approached his position. "Lieutenant Carter, New Haven Defense Force, 3 soldiers with me, all friendlies." The Marine sergeant who responded moved with the fluid grace of someone completely at home in combat armor. "Sergeant Mike Torres, 1st Marine Regiment. Good to see you're still fighting, Lieutenant. We're here to get your people out and teach these aliens some manners." Carter felt tears in his eyes as he looked at the Marines' weapons and equipment. After 3 days of fighting with improvised explosives and failing rifles, seeing properly armed human soldiers felt like a miracle. "There are civilians in the underground shelters, Sergeant. Thousands of them. The aliens have been hunting them down." "Not anymore they haven't," Torres replied grimly. "Colonel Parker's orders are to eliminate all hostile forces and secure the civilian population. These Vorthak picked the wrong species to mess with." In the underground shelters, the sound of human weapons fire echoed through the tunnels like music. Lisa Morgan listened to the tactical communications with growing amazement as Marine units reported their progress through the colony. The aliens, who had terrorized New Haven for 3 days, were being systematically eliminated by soldiers who made it look as why Dr. Amy Johnson was monitoring the energy signatures from the space battle above. "The alien flagship is still in orbit, but it's not firing anymore. I think they're afraid of hitting their own forces on the ground. Or they're afraid of what that human battlecruiser will do to them if they try," Lisa replied. She had seen the tactical display showing the Vengeance's position, and she knew the alien commander was trapped between the human warship and his own desperation. On the surface, the battle for New Haven was turning into a rout. The Vorthak ground forces found themselves facing opponents who were better trained, better equipped, and fighting to protect their own kind. Human Marines moved through the colony with implacable determination, their weapons cutting through alien armor like it was made of paper. Ground Commander Vexstar tried to rally his warriors from his command post in the mining complex, but his communications were being jammed by human electronic warfare systems. The carefully organized invasion force was breaking apart as individual units were surrounded and destroyed by Marine assault teams. "Fall back to the crystal mines," he ordered the units that could still receive his transmissions. "We will make our stand there and use the harvested crystals as leverage for negotiation." It was a desperate plan, but Vexstar knew his situation was hopeless. The humans had arrived with superior numbers and equipment, and his warriors were dying faster than he could count them. If he could reach the quantum crystal storage facility, he might be able to bargain for his life. Colonel Parker had other ideas. His tactical display showed the alien commander's retreat, and he was already moving units to cut off the escape route. "Bravo Company, advance on the mining complex." Charlie Company, flank them from the north. "I want that alien commander alive if possible, but dead if necessary." The final battle took place among the machinery and tunnels of New Haven's quantum crystal mines. The Vorthak made their last stand in the same place they had come to plunder, using the mining equipment as cover while human marines closed in from all sides. Danny White was still alive in the power station, though barely conscious from exhaustion and dehydration. He had heard the sounds of battle changing over the past hour, and he dared to hope that help had finally arrived. When the door to his barricaded control room was blown open, he expected to see alien warriors coming to finish him off. Instead, he saw a human marine in full combat armor, the American flag clearly visible on the shoulder plate. "Danny White?" the marine asked. "We're here to get you out of this mess." Danny collapsed with relief. He had kept the colony's power systems running for 3 days against impossible odds, and now he could finally rest. "The generators are failing?" he whispered. "I couldn't fix them anymore." "You did good, kid," the Marine replied as he called for a medical team. "You kept those shields up long enough for us to get here. That's what matters." In the space above New Haven, Admiral Patricia Wells maintained her position between the remaining Vorthak battlecruiser and the planet. Commander Ziegler had stopped transmitting threats, which suggested he was either planning something desperate or finally accepting the reality of his situation. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the alien flagship," reported her communications officer. "It's in broken human standard asking for terms of surrender." Patricia considered the request with the cold calculation of a career military officer. The aliens had attacked human civilians without provocation, and they had shown no mercy to the colonists they captured. But she also knew that taking prisoners could provide valuable intelligence about Vorthak military capabilities and future plans. "Tell them they can surrender unconditionally and submit to interrogation, or they can die fighting," she replied. "Those are the only terms I'm offering." On the colony surface, the last Vorthak resistance collapsed as Marine assault teams stormed the quantum crystal mines. Ground Commander Vexstar made his final stand in the main storage chamber, surrounded by crates of the crystals he had come to steal. His remaining warriors fought with the desperation of cornered animals, but human weapons and tactics proved superior once again. "Surrender now, and you might live long enough to see a prison cell," Colonel Parker announced through his suits. External speakers: "Keep fighting and you'll die right here." Vexstar's response was to raise his energy rifle and fire at the nearest Marine, but his shot was absorbed harmlessly by advanced human armor. The return fire from multiple Marine weapons ended the alien commander's life in an instant. Along with his dreams of conquest and glory, Lisa Morgan emerged from the underground shelters to find New Haven transformed. What had been a scene of destruction and terror just hours before was now secured by human Marines who moved with professional efficiency. Medical teams were already treating wounded colonists, while engineers worked to restore power and communications. "Ma'am, you're the colony administrator?" asked a Marine captain who approached her position. "Captain Jim Davis, 3rd Marine Battalion. We need to get an accurate count of survivors and assess damage for our report." Lisa looked around at the ruins of the colony she had worked so hard to build. "How many people did we lose?" she asked, dreading the answer. "We're still doing the count, but preliminary numbers suggest about 7,000 civilian casualties," Davis replied gently. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We got here as fast as we could." 7,000 people dead out of a population of 15,000. The price of the Vorthak attack had been terrible, but it could have been much worse. Without the arrival of the Vengeance, every single colonist would have died. Dr. Amy Johnson approached with a datapad containing her analysis of the alien technology and communications. "Lisa, you need to see this." The Vorthak attack on New Haven was just the beginning. They've been planning a much larger campaign against human space. The intelligence data recovered from captured alien equipment painted a disturbing picture. The Vorthak Empire had identified dozens of human colonies as targets for resource extraction, and they had been building a fleet specifically designed for rapid conquest operations. "Admiral Wells needs to see this information immediately," Lisa said. "If the aliens are planning more attacks like this one, our military needs to be prepared." High above them, the space battle finally came to an end. Commander Zeke Thur's flagship had suffered critical damage from the Vengeance's weapons, and his crew was dead or unconscious. The alien commander himself had survived only because his command bridge had been designed to withstand battle damage. "This is Admiral Wells of the UHS Vengeance," came the transmission to his failing ship. "Your vessel is disabled and you're ground. Forces have been eliminated. Surrender immediately, or I will finish what you started."